Morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this session of Introduction to aPriori Cloud. I'll be spending the session this morning to provide a more general overview of the cloud solution and sort of look under the covers of what's there to help our customers use it. My name is Karsten Hochmuth. I'm a Director of Product Management at aPriori, and I'm joined today by Julie Driscoll, our Chief Product Officer, to help with the moderating. So let's jump right in. As a quick starting point, just wanted to do a short recap of what is aPriori Cloud. It's effectively our sort of established and world-leading manufacturability and cost insight platform, but delivered in the cloud. We provide it as a fully managed software as a service offering, fully managed by aPriori, and it gives you access to all the aPriori applications from a browser, nothing to install locally, just connect, and you have access to a broad suite of applications, really anytime and from anywhere. So digging a bit deeper, what's sort of that is comprised of is there's a set of applications. There's a series of 5 applications: Cloud Home, aPriori Professional, Cost Insight Design, Cost Insight Report, and Cost Insight Connect. Talk more about what each of these do in this presentation. Those are supported by a scalable, highly availability set of core services that we're running on the Amazon platform. We're a technology partner of Amazon's and leverage that to deliver all of this to you in the cloud. And then we also, more recently, have built out some integration capabilities, and you might have heard about this in the ACRA presentation, and there's actually a parallel track around CI Generate that's describing this. We can connect to PLM system to support automated workflows, and we can even provide you access to sort of our reporting database if you have preferred BI tools that you want to use to connect and analyze and work with the data. So before I sort of get more deeply into slides, I thought I'd sort of share a quick video that gives some highlights of how to use the solution and sort of gives you a bit of a sense how everything works. The starting point is our cloud homepage, so that's now a nice sort of single entry point into everything. You see a list of all the applications. You have access to our knowledge center there and central notifications. From there, this example here jumps into CI Design, a role-based app for design engineers. Here I have quick access to, in this case, a list of parts and assemblies that I've been working on in my private workspace. I can then put together some filters. So I was searching for, in this case, all assemblies that I've been working on, and then I can jump right in. Looking at this assembly, I think one of the nicest things we've sort of had with this new tool is a great viewer that is very fast and very flexible and responsive. You can view assemblies, you can view part files. Here I'm looking at this assembly. You can see the sort of top level sub-assemblies there, and I'm highlighting there's 4 of these shock assemblies. It's a little model car suspension for an RC car. And then I can look at sort of zoom in. I have some tools to zoom, make components transparent. So it gives you just right out of the box some neat tools to visualize and work through the assembly. This one is like an explode feature, which is a lot of fun to sort of dive in and get a closer look at the parts and isolate the ones that you might want to work with. So from there, I can jump quickly into a specific part. The zoom it's a bit zoomed out, so I'm not sure if it's too hard to read, but on the left, this is our sort of summary set of information about a part. You can see access to the cost results and breakdown, and also access to our DFM and DTC guidance. For a number of process groups, this one's a plastic part. We have some great detailed guidance available. This one's highlighting a couple of different features. And also one of the new features here, you'll see that in a second, is guidance that gives you insights into that particular issue. So even if you're not familiar why, let's say, a deep hole in a plastic molding part is not great, it lets you take a closer look at that. It gives you insight. Here, let me just pause for a second and restart to catch up. So we're looking at actually the other main app that we provide in the cloud, which is a full version of aPriori Professional. But rather than having this as an on-premise installation, what you're looking at here is the entire familiar application that many of you, I'm sure, know, delivered to you in the cloud. So you have the lightweight web app, and you have the full featured sort of deep set of capabilities that aPriori provides you. Jumping back into Cloud Home, highlighting just a couple of other quick things in the context here. You see a report as an example, so I just wanted to highlight how quickly you can jump into the reporting app and then back to Cloud Home. I'd sort of encourage you to look at some of the other sessions where you can learn more about these different tools. I believe in the tech showcase, you'll have different people giving demos. You'll have a chance to see more of that there as well. So to sort of spend a bit of time on each of these areas, some of the things you've highlighted, the starting point, as you saw, for the cloud applications is Cloud Home, and this is relatively new in our latest release. All you have to remember is this one URL and a couple of, I think, great new features here. In addition, just to making it much easier to connect, we also support multi-factor authentication, and we have a number of customers now connecting with SAML. So it allows you to use the customers or your identity provider to automatically and securely authenticate in our cloud solution. And from there, you saw a bit of that in the app. We have some guidance built into everywhere, and this sort of extends to actually all of our DTC issues that we identify. So the one you saw earlier is this depth to hole diameter ratio, and these are process group specific. So as you go to machining, casting, plastics, you'll get some great tips and guidance, and it's a great way to sort of remind yourself of what the issues are. Also, if you're new to this, familiarize yourself with specific cost drivers and issues to consider. So lots of easy to learn tools built into the application from the ground up. And underneath, so all stakeholders in the evaluation of product for manufacturability and cost, one of the key things about the cloud is that they can collaborate in a single global shared database. So we support all the different phases from design to refinement to review to sourcing to tracking that with reporting tools. The principle of collaboration is really sort of underlies and is the foundation for all of the product capabilities that we have. And I think it ties back a bit also to some of the discussions earlier today. We, I think Akko and others talked about how input from different roles is important and sort of a iteration and refinement of the results as you're working with it. So it really enables to, let's say, do an early estimate and design, refine it in aPriori, send it to a number of stakeholders for review, push it to sourcing, and then track the whole thing in the reporting applications. On top of that, this again was mentioned earlier, and unfortunately, one of the sessions on CA Generate is running right now in parallel, but of course you have access to the recording and the slides, so you can watch. I recommend sort of watching that later. There's a range of new automation tools that allow you to sort of automate many of these workflows. For example, you can, as a design engineer, as you push things into PLM with our new Cost Insight Generate integration capabilities, these can be automatically checked and costed in aPriori. We can provide feedback back into the PLM system and then reporting to the design engineer or to other stakeholders like cost engineers and sourcing. And from there, there's really just one click away to get at Cost Insight Design and other tools for review. And effectively, what this automation creates is a whole new inflow of costed scenarios and simplifies that. So, of course, you still have the ability to manually cost, but you can automate with this as well. and leverage it across all the apps. So what I'd like to do is sort of highlight within each of these different apps some of the key features that you have in the cloud for, as you jump, for example, from the report that you get into CAD design. You have detailed manufacturability review, and relatively new, a DFM risk rating that we assign to a part gives you very quick at a glance which parts should I be concerned about the most, and focus on in terms of improving manufacturability and impacting some of the cost of that part. That comes, of course, with our sort of long-standing capability to work with really many different CAD systems. Those can come in from CAD Generate. Those can be imported from really any different CAD systems with PMI. And also highlight here is we have a sort of working with our partner Autodesk, a great capability within their tool set to their generative design capabilities to do generative design in Autodesk Fusion and then bring those outcomes, get some initial cost estimates there using aPriori technology, and then get some outcomes in our applications for further refinement. And I'll highlight just a few points here, so make sure we leave some time for questions. But at each of these different stages, there's capability to do a range of different work with the design data that you're evaluating and reviewing. So as I've mentioned, you can click through from the reports into here. You can update and try different design variants to find stock, secondary treatments, tolerances. Someone had asked earlier, but what about sort of secondary treatments and adding processes? You can do that within this app, like paint or coating, for example, or heat treat. The 3D viewer is always available to you, and you can create comparisons and then pass that along to sourcing or cost engineering for review. So as you saw in that little video, you have access to the full power of aPriori Professional, where you can refine processes. For example, you can do individual machine assignments. You can really tweak and tune the cost to give you a detailed should cost estimate. And of course, managing our digital factories in this environment to help with the supplier negotiation or sort of the costing for your internal resources and factories. The results are then available for a broader set of stakeholders. Again, this is where you might leverage cost insight design. I think Signify spoke to this, that they have the ability with this web tool to sort of have a broader set of engagement with a lot of designers and get feedback, bring this to the manufacturing floor, walk into design reviews, adding notes for annotation, create alternate scenarios. So great way of using this tool for review as well. Earlier today, beginning, I think Stephanie mentioned our sourcing capabilities. We, of course, have extensive sourcing support in our AP Professional tool, but there's also some new applications that we're working on. There is another parallel session on sourcing, which I encourage you to check out later. And here, and just some of the key features, of course, you can do is compare with supplier quotes, collaborate with your suppliers. You can track targets for roll-ups or for assemblies. So some powerful tools to track as in sourcing, and then, of course, use our reporting tools to bring all of that together and drive action and sort of do value tracking and realized savings trackings there. And then all of that comes back to the collaborative flow where you're closing the loop. So in each of these different stages, you make changes, and there might be one or multiple iterations. There's really no sort of limit to how sort of much you collaborate on your workflows and evolve your designs, but it allows you to sort of work as a single team, globally distributed. You sort of highlights, I think one highlight from also the Signify story this morning was around how they had teams all over the world working on this and sharing and accessing designs and results. So a very quick tour of some of the features, and if you'd like to learn more, I certainly encourage you to check out the tech showcase or contact us, and we have some follow-ups. Also would like to highlight that we're doing some usability labs. So those labs will provide you some one-on-one access to review certain new features that our UX team is working on, look at, I believe, some of the plugins, and you also have the ability to look at some of the training that's new in-app training and in-app guidance that we're working on and that we'd like to get some feedback on. And those are this afternoon as well as tomorrow afternoon. If, of course, those time slots don't work, also please feel free to schedule individual meetings, and we'll, of course, try to catch up when we can. So transitioning a bit here into how does all this work? Like, what's under the covers, and how do we provide this fully managed service to you in the cloud? So the definition of a SaaS service is that it's rather than you installing the product, we're managing all of that and the infrastructure and the servers. So that comes with a number of benefits. You have less administration. You really have little or no IT costs and expense to manage this. The upgrades are faster. We've, I think, just recently completed an upgrade cycle with all of our cloud customers, or are in process of doing that. You're always up to date to the latest feature release. The connection and connectivity to the app is very secure. High availability. We leverage a number of data centers with Amazon in the cloud, and also within each data centers, what they call region effectively represents multiple physical data centers, and which they reference as availability zones, and we distribute our applications and services across these zones. So even in the remote possibility that like a zone is out because of a natural disaster or power outage, we switch over to other zones to keep the service up and running. And I think both the way we deploy the cloud as well as some of these new in-app guidance tools, you're really up and running from day one with all the different applications available to you. So that results in faster onboarding and faster adoption. The other aspect of this that we get asked about a lot, and I think that is part of every customer considering going to the cloud, is what about security? How secure is this? How do you make sure that the IP of our IP as a customer is safe and secure? So we take this very seriously, and I think to support that, have worked on a number of certifications. Started out at really, I think, more than 2 years ago now around GDPR. So we're fully compliant with GDPR requirements. We, as we start working with Amazon and we're evolving and building on our partnership there, they have best practices on how to deploy a cloud architecture. So working closely with their solution architects and making sure we build that out in a best practice. We do third-party testing every release. And we have a certification that is what's called SOC 2 Level 2. And generally in conversations with IT, that might be usually the most important that comes up. It's a very detailed and thorough test with a third-party audit of our processes and how we deploy. And that is done sort of at a point in time and monitored over time. So that in itself, I think is often answers most of the questions an IT department might have, that the fact that we have this certification. The other pillar sort of our security is that we build all of this on Amazon, and they have a very strong security model. And we have also built it in a way that allows only secure connections and different authentication flows that allow you to use multi-factor if you want, or use SAML type of connectivity and federated SSO if you'd like. We have customers that work globally, all over the world. We have teams in the US, in Europe, in India, in China, in other regions that need to connect and have a responsive system. So we work with 4 major Amazon regions to support that. And that allows us to sort of provide the connectivity and responsiveness that helps our customers use the cloud regardless of where they are really located. So that sort of highlights some of the security aspects. I wanted to sort of wrap on some of the key benefits and values for the enterprise that we see and values for the end users. Mentioned a couple of these before in the conversation. So on the enterprise side, one of the key, I think, benefits is less infrastructure expense and maintenance. Certainly with an on-premise deployment, you have to worry about the hardware, the servers, managing those servers, updating the databases, updating the applications, setting up a sandbox for you. So there's costs involved and effort that goes away. And I think another benefit not to be underestimated is that an end user can really use any machine. So we've had customers considering MacBooks, we've had customers considering Chromebooks. Because the computation is in the cloud, the resources of your end user machine becomes far less important, and all the costing and everything happens, sort of the compute intensive stuff happens in the cloud on our scalable servers. The security we've talked about, it sort of re-highlights some of the key benefits. Often providing security on-premise requires a similar effort. So if you can rely on that being in the cloud, then that is sort of takes another burden away from managing it yourself. And we built it for scalability. So the costing services scale, the upstream services we have for aPriori scale, and reporting services, so that, again, the computing happens in the cloud, and it's designed to scale based on the number of users trying to access it. So if you go from a team of 20 to a team of 100, you have that freedom to sort of scale and grow that, building on the services as that goes. The shifting sort of more the end user benefits, I think early on we touched on, I think, each of these, the ability to connect from anywhere at any point, I think it is a big game changer. We've talked to customers that want to connect from the shop floor, that want to be remote at this when they're doing supplier visits, that they can log in and say, sort of share with the supplier some data about their parts. It encourages more collaboration with the different tools all working together. And it creates this single source of DFM and DTC insights, everyone's accessing the same sort of shared models in the cloud. We have some role-based specific views. You've seen a bit of cost insight design, and we've had that tool out for a bit. There's some new ones. You've heard about cost insight source that we're working on, and of course that platform is designed to scale and build out more over time. And then lastly, so I think the faster time to value with some of the in-app training tools. We've just started building those out and providing that guidance. So one of the goals we're sort of trying to get to is that a new user can log in and they have all the tools at their disposal to learn this on their own, or to reach out to an expert, or to connect to some expert knowledge about, let's say, a particular DFM issue that they need to work on or might want to work on. So that actually was able to get through this quite fast. So hopefully didn't go too fast through this, but also that what means this sort of the end of the slides that I had, and it gives us maybe a good 10 minutes for some questions here. I noticed so Julie has already been answering some of these online. So Julie, do we have sort of additional questions you can speak to now? I think you might be on mute, Julie.
I was on mute. Thanks, Carsten.
Oh, okay.
So I did answer some of the questions in the chat panel, but I think there are a number of questions that are worthy of a little more discussion, particularly around performance and upgrades. So let's start with upgrades. I think upgrades have been something that our customers have told us about, the user council has told us about, can be challenging, and that the user council has identified that there are customers on many different versions because of the time and effort to upgrade. Can you talk a little bit more detail about the upgrade process for customers who are using aPriori in the cloud?
Yes, yeah. So a couple of things. I think one, actually wanted to do a quick pitch. There's a session right after this, which is on cloud migration and cloud upgrades. Actually, it's less about upgrades. It's more about going from on-prem to cloud that Emily's leading. So encourage you to jump on that. And then with regard to upgrades, the way we're setting this up for customers is we provide a very step-by-step process where, let's say right now you're on or just earlier, a customer was on the 19.2 release. Then we say, okay, then 20.1 release is available. First thing that happens is the customer gets a sandbox that has the 20.1 release and actually all their data in it. And then we have a series of cost validation, cost upgrade reports that are pre-built, pre-designed for you to look through sort of a sample set of parts. And we publish a cost impact guide that highlights the differences in a given release with, let's say, material rates, overheads, labor rates, some new features or new process groups or improvements. So it gives you a sort of step-by-step guidance. And then that sandbox is available for up to an 8-week period. But in this recent round of upgrades, we've seen some customers go through this in less than a week. Based on the tooling that's available, it's a very quick validation, quick check. So we've seen, I think, with everything sort of being provided to the users, that it becomes a quick process. There's no waiting for IT for a sandbox. There's no sort of extra configuration you have to worry about. We give it to you once you've finished validating the sandbox. We make sure we capture any deltas during that process and then switch all the users over. The other nice thing about this is there's no time, maybe during the final switchover, for a very short period off business hours, but there really is no downtime. The other piece to highlight is, I think we've done recently a number of migrations. So if you're coming from on-premise to the cloud, you could potentially it almost doesn't matter which older version you're on. You don't have to be on the most recent version to migrate to the cloud. You could be on several releases back, and you can still go ahead and move to the latest version in the cloud during your migration.
Thanks, Carsten. So another set of questions was around performance. And if a customer today is using aPro on-prem and they migrate to the cloud, and some of the users continue to use aPro in the cloud, others may be using the Cost Insight Design or Cost Insight Report, what can be expected by performance? Would those aPro users experience faster costing?
I think a couple of pieces to that. The way aPriori runs in the cloud is that we provide an instance to every user. So each user has a dedicated set of computing power available to them. Now in the cloud, that's a pretty powerful, it's I think equivalent to like an 8-core machine with 32 gigs of RAM and a graphical GPU. So I'd say in generally what we've seen in testing data is that that's faster than what you're used to on-premise for a couple of reasons. One is a lot of the time your on-premise laptop might not be as powerful. So we throw more horsepower at it in the cloud. And you might be running other stuff on your on-premise. So if you're running Creo or another CAD system on your local laptop, you have multiple things competing for compute power, where in the cloud, it's this dedicated instance running aPriori. Then if you get into the Cost Insight Design world, there we're actually building we have a sort of a whole farm of costing servers. So you're sending, let's say, on-premise, you might be costing 10 parts and they do it in sequence. In the cloud, it will grab those parts and cost them in parallel. So in addition to some more compute power that we throw at it, we also have more parallel costing happening in the cloud. So you see performance gains in both those dimensions.
Okay. While we're talking about the infrastructure, I know security is a big consideration of whether you're on-prem or in the cloud. What are some of the typical security questions you get about our cloud solutions?
So I think the typical ones that we get from IT department, like the very first one is sort of around compliance, because the SOC 2 level 2 is sort of answers a lot of the questions. So that might be a starting point, that we share our white paper, we share the fact that we have that compliance, and then that checks most of the boxes. And then the next question would be, we have a few specific additional IT policy or security policy questions, and the team at aPriori, and we have a security architect and others that provide those answers. But compliance would be, I think, the main one, and usually that goes most of the way. And then there's a few additional questions that we have a team at aPriori that's sort of set up to answer those security questions for you.
Okay, thanks. And can you share some examples of how our cloud customers are collaborating?
Sure. I think one, actually, a couple came up this morning around, I think with Signify, around sort of the idea of design and cost engineering collaborating and working more closely together. I think there's sort of two main use cases that we see is sort of the early upstream costing, where the design engineer or design might be doing the early costing and creating some comparisons, looking at different design options. Let's say one of these sort of components in this assembly on the screen here, and create some variants for that design, and then push that over to either cost it completely if it's a simple part, or then push that over to cost engineering for refinement. So that's sort of the upstream design costing or evaluation. And then there's downstream evaluation, where you might have a detailed should cost estimate, but you want to push it out for review with designers, for review with suppliers or other team stakeholders.
And thinking about our deployments where we have many cost engineers who are supporting engineers or sourcing, can the cloud help the cost engineering teams to be more productive?
Yeah, I believe we've seen that with, and one of the challenges we hear about is that there's only so many, the cost engineering teams are only so big in terms of their capacity, their ability to process everything that's sort of flowing inbound from the product teams for NPI and value engineering projects. So if there's workflows that make that faster, I mean, certainly the CI generate automation could make that whole workflow a lot faster, more access to sort of front-end design tools. So it creates the throughput for cost engineering by opening it up and making these tools available to more people, and also by automating them more.
Okay, so one approach could be that using Cost Insight Generate to drive that initial analysis, that could increase the throughput, and then the cost engineer could pick that up and refine that estimate from there and use that as a means to share with the design engineer or with sourcing.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Got it. Okay. Here, let me just take a look at the panel and see if we have any additional questions. So there's one about, you talked about Cloud Home and that Cloud Home is your single source of how you launch into all the different cloud applications that you have access to. Can you talk a little bit about how we permission, and can you tailor what that screen looks like for different types of users, whether it be admins or end users or sourcing or engineering?
Yes, yeah. So the screen that you saw on the demo had probably every app on it because it's our demo app, and so you have access to everything there. But typically, if let's say you're a design engineer, you might only have one or two items, maybe Cost Insight Design and the reporting app. If you're in sourcing, then maybe all you do is work with is aPriori and the reporting application. So those are tailored based on your permissions and your role in the company and sort of your level. I mean, Cost Insight Connect was another example on that screen, which is the app where you design workflows for CI Generate for the automated costing. So that might be available only to a few admins in your company that configure those workflows. So it's definitely role-based and permission-based. And then, of course, within these apps, like within aPriori, there's a much finer access control model, which is the same access control model that you have on-premise today.
Okay, great. I just realized we went a couple minutes over, so I think this is a good time for us to wrap up. Karsten, thanks for sharing your insights and details about the cloud solution, and listeners, thanks for participating in the session as well. If you have any additional questions, as Karsten mentioned, just reach out directly to him or to myself. There's also the forums, in the discussion forums on the Cost Insight Conference. You can feel free to start a conversation. And lastly, would love for your feedback on the session. You can answer a very quick survey, which the link is found under the session page. There's a survey links area. So thank you. This concludes the webinar. Have a great day.